The Glass Plains, a sci-fi story. Part 1. The wind skated across the black glass with a sound like distant breathing. Riven paused. One boot braced against a ridge of fused obsidian. Listening. The sound came again, a soft exhalation beneath the surface, as if the plains themselves were alive. His Geiger counter clicked in a steady rhythm at his hip, the needle trembling in the red. Radiation shimmered in the air like heat haze, warping the horizon into a wavering mirage. He tightened the straps on his mask and kept walking. The glass plains stretched for thousands of kilometers, a continent-wide scar left by the final exchange. Where forests, cities, and oceans once existed, there was now only a single sheet of black, rippled glass, smooth in some places, jagged in others, like frozen waves. Beneath it, the old world was entombed in molten strata. People said the heat still pulsed down there, trapped for centuries. People also said the whispers were real. Riven had never believed that part. Not until today. He stepped over a fracture line, the glass glowing faintly blue along its edges. The sun was sinking behind the horizon, turning the plains into a vast mirror of blood-red sky. Night was coming fast. He needed shelter before the temperature dropped and the shapes began to move. He'd seen them once, silhouettes drifting under the surface, distorted by layers of fused silica. They moved slowly, like swimmers in thick syrup. He'd told himself it was just heat currents or radiation hallucinations. But the shapes had followed him for hours, matching his pace. He'd never forgotten that. A low rumble vibrated through the soles of his boots. He froze. The sound deepened, resonating like a giant heartbeat. The glass beneath him trembled. Then came the whisper, a thin, wavering voice, rising from below. Riven. His breath caught. He spun around, scanning the empty horizon. Nothing. Only the endless black expanse, reflecting the dying sun. The whisper came again, clearer this time. Riven. Help! His pulse hammered. He took a step back, boots scraping on the glass. Who's there? He shouted, though he knew how pointless it was. Sound didn't travel downward through the fused layers. Whatever he was hearing wasn't sound in the normal sense. It was something else, something reaching up. He forced himself to move, pushing into a jog. The nearest shelter was an old survey outpost half a kilometer ahead, a squat metal dome built on stilts to avoid direct contact with the glass. If he could reach it before full dark, he'd be safe. The plains groaned beneath him. Riven. He ran. The outpost. The outpost door hissed open as he approached, its solar-powered lock still functional after all these years. He ducked inside and slammed the door shut, twisting the manual latch until it clanged into place. Silence. He leaned against the wall, chest heaving, sweat pooling inside his mask. The whispering had stopped the moment he crossed the threshold. He waited a full minute before peeling the mask off. The air inside was stale but breathable. He collapsed onto the metal bench and let his head fall back. Get a grip, he muttered, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. He'd crossed the plains dozens of times. He'd scavenged old relay towers, cracked bunkers, even the ruins of a submerged arcology. He'd seen radiation storms, glass quakes, and mutated wildlife that should not have existed. But nothing unnerved him like the whispers. He opened his pack and pulled out a battered canteen. The water tasted metallic, but it steadied him. He set the canteen aside and activated the outpost's console. The screen flickered to life, displaying a grainy map of the region. His destination was still 120 kilometers east. The Sunken Relay, an old communications hub rumored to contain pre-war archives. If the stories were true, it might hold data on the subsurface anomalies the survivors people claimed were trapped beneath the glass. Riven didn't believe in survivors. Not really, but he believed in data. He zoomed in on the relay's coordinates. The area was marked with hazard symbols. Extreme radiation, unstable terrain, seismic activity. Nothing he hadn't dealt with before. He shut the console off and rubbed his eyes. A faint tapping sound echoed through the outpost. He froze. Tap, tap, tap. came from beneath the floor. He crouched, pressing his ear to the metal grate. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. Then came the whisper, muffled, distorted, but unmistakable. "Riven? Open." He stumbled back, heart pounding. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The whisper rose in pitch, becoming a chorus of overlapping voices. "Riven, help us. Help." He clamped his hands over his ears, but the voices weren't entering through sound. They vibrated inside his skull, threading through his thoughts like cold fingers. He backed against the wall, breathing hard. Then, as suddenly as it began, the whispering stopped. Silence returned. Riven slid down the wall and sat on the floor, shaking. He needed sleep. He needed to clear his head. Radiation exposure could cause auditory hallucinations. So could dehydration. So could stress. He repeated these facts like a mantra until his breathing steadied. But deep down, he knew the truth. The voices had known his name. Nightfall. He woke to darkness. The outpost lights had gone out. The air was cold enough to sting his lungs. He fumbled for his flashlight and clicked it on. The beam illuminated the interior, metal walls, storage crates, the console, all intact. But the floor was glowing. Thin veins of blue light pulsed beneath the metal grate, tracing patterns like branching roots. The glow intensified, spreading outward in a web of luminescent cracks. Riven's breath hitched. The glass beneath the outpost was heating up. He grabbed his pack and slung it over his shoulder. The outpost was supposed to be insulated from thermal surges, but nothing was designed to withstand a full subsurface breach. The floor vibrated. A low moan rose from below, like the sound of someone drowning. Riven bolted for the door. He slammed the latch open and stumbled outside. The night air hit him like a wall of ice. The plains stretched out in all directions, shimmering with faint blue light. The glow pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Shapes moved beneath the surface, dozens of them, drifting in slow, sinuous arcs. Riven's stomach twisted. They were closer than he'd ever seen them. He backed away from the outpost. The metal structure groaned as the glass beneath it bulged upward. A crack shot across the ground, splitting the surface like a lightning bolt. Then the whispering began again. "Riven!" He turned and ran. The chase. The plains were treacherous at night. The glass became brittle in the cold, fracturing under too much weight. Riven moved quickly but carefully, leaping over fissures and skirting around jagged ridges. Behind him, the outpost collapsed with a deafening crash. A plume of blue-white light shot into the sky, illuminating the plains like daylight. The whispering grew louder. "Riven, don't run." He gritted his teeth and pushed harder. The shapes beneath the glass followed him, their movements accelerating. They glided through the molten sublayer like shadows in water, keeping pace effortlessly. One of them rose toward the surface, its silhouette sharpening. Riven caught a glimpse, a humanoid form, elongated and twisted, limbs bending at impossible angles. He stumbled, nearly falling. The shape pressed against the underside of the glass, its face flattening against the surface. A distorted mouth opened in a silent scream. Riven sprinted. His lungs burned. His legs felt like lead. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. A cluster of shapes converged beneath him, their movements synchronized. The glass bulged upward, cracking under the pressure. Riven veered left, skidding across a sloped ridge. The glass shattered behind him, shards spraying into the air like black ice. A hand, or something like a hand, reached through the fracture, grasping blindly. Riven didn't look back. The signal. He ran until his legs gave out, collapsing behind a jagged outcrop of fused stone. He lay there, gasping, listening for the whispers. Silence. The shapes had stopped following. He waited several minutes before sitting up. His hands were trembling uncontrollably. He forced himself to breathe slowly, counting each inhale. When he finally stood, he noticed something strange. His radio was on. He hadn't turned it on. The device crackled with static, then a faint voice emerged. Not a whisper, but a transmission. Riven, do you copy? He froze. The voice was human, clear, calm. Riven, this is Station 9. We have your signal. Respond. His throat tightened. Station 9 was a myth, a rumored enclave of scientists who'd survived the exchange in a deep Earth bunker. No one had ever confirmed its existence. He lifted the radio slowly. This is Riven, he said, voice hoarse. I copy. Static crackled. We've been tracking the subsurface activity. You're in danger. You need to reach the Sunken Relay immediately. I know, he said. I'm heading there. Good. There's something you need to see. Something we couldn't transmit. Riven swallowed hard. What is it? A long pause. Proof. Proof of what? Another pause. They're not dead, Riven. Not the way you think. His blood ran cold. And they're trying to reach the surface. The transmission cut out. Riven stared at the radio, heart pounding. The shapes beneath the glass. The whispers. The voices calling his name. They weren't hallucinations. They were real. And they were waking up. Part 2. The radio crackled again. Riven, do you copy? You need to move. Now. He didn't answer. He was already running. The plains ahead sloped downward into a valley of fractured glass, the terrain jagged like broken teeth. The blue glow beneath the surface pulsed faster now, as if reacting to his movement. The shapes followed, drifting beneath him in a loose formation. He leapt over a fissure, boots skidding on the slick surface. A shard the size of a spear jutted upward, catching the moonlight. He grabbed it for balance, and yanked his hand back with a hiss. The shard was hot. Too hot. The sublayer was rising. He sprinted toward a ridge of fused basalt, one of the few places where the glass thinned enough to expose the old volcanic rock beneath. If he could reach it, he'd have solid ground under his feet. Behind him, the plains groaned. A crack shot across the surface, racing toward him like a living thing. Riven dove. The crack exploded beneath him, sending a geyser of molten blue light into the air. He hit the ground hard, rolling across the basalt ridge. The heat washed over him, searing the exposed skin around his mask. He scrambled to his feet. The shapes were rising. Dozens of them. They pressed against the underside of the glass, their silhouettes sharpening. Limbs elongated, faces distorted. Some had too many joints, others had none. Their movements were jerky, spasmodic, like puppets pulled by invisible strings. Riven backed away, heart hammering. One of the shapes slammed against the surface. The glass spiderwebbed. A hand, long, skeletal, fingers fused together, punched through the crack. Riven drew his plasma cutter. The tool wasn't meant for combat. It was meant for slicing through metal and debris. But it was all he had. The hand clawed upward, dragging a twisted torso behind it. The creature's skin was translucent, veins glowing with blue radiation. Its mouth opened in a silent scream. Riven ignited the cutter. A blade of white-hot plasma hissed to life. The creature lunged. Riven swung. The blade sliced through the creature's arm, severing it at the elbow. The limb fell to the ground, twitching. The creature recoiled, its body convulsing as blue light pulsed through its veins. Riven didn't wait for it to recover. He ran. The descent. The ridge sloped downward into a narrow ravine, a place where the glass had shattered long ago, exposing layers of fused rock and ash. Riven slid down the incline, using his boots to brake. The air grew warmer, the ground vibrating beneath him. The whispers returned. Not soft this time. Urgent. Riven, stop. Don't go down. He ignored them. The ravine opened into a cavern, a hollow space beneath the plains where molten glass had once pooled and cooled. Stalactites of obsidian hung from the ceiling like black fangs. The floor was uneven, littered with shards. Riven ducked inside. The temperature dropped instantly. The cavern was shielded from the radiation above. His Geiger counter quieted. He allowed himself one breath of relief. Then he heard it. A scraping sound. He spun, plasma cutter raised. A figure stood at the far end of the cavern. Human, or close enough. The figure stepped into the light of Riven's flashlight. It was a woman, or had been once. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. Her hair hung in brittle strands. She raised a hand. "Don't run," she said. Her voice was the same one he'd heard whispering beneath the glass. Riven tightened his grip on the cutter. "What are you?" he demanded. She tilted her head, studying him. "Alive," she said. "More than you." She took a step forward. Riven stepped back. "Stay where you are." She stopped, but her expression didn't change. "You're heading to the Sunken Relay," she said. "You think it holds answers. It does. It holds a door." Riven frowned. "A door to what?" "To us." The cavern trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They're coming," she said. "You woke them." "I didn't wake anything." "You crossed the plains. You listened. You heard us. That's enough." The tremors intensified. The ground cracked. Blue light seeped through the fissures. Riven backed toward the exit. The woman didn't move. "You can't outrun them," she said. "But you can choose how you meet them." "I'm not meeting anything," Riven snapped. "I'm getting to the relay." She smiled, a small, sad smile. "Then you'll see the truth." The cavern floor split open. Riven dove as a geyser of molten blue light erupted behind him. He scrambled up the ravine, shards slicing his gloves. The woman's voice echoed after him. "Run, Riven. Run while you still can." He didn't need to be told twice. The storm. He emerged from the ravine into chaos. The plains were alive. The entire surface pulsed with blue light, cracks spreading like veins. Shapes swarmed beneath the glass, moving faster now, converging on his position. A radiation storm was forming, a swirling vortex of charged particles rising from the sublayer. The air crackled with static. His Geiger counter screamed. He sprinted toward the eastern horizon. The storm hit. A blast of ionized wind slammed into him, knocking him off his feet. He rolled across the glass, sparks flying from his gear. The sky lit up with arcs of blue lightning, striking the ground in rapid succession. He crawled behind a jagged outcrop, shielding his face. The storm roared overhead, tearing at the surface. Shards of glass ripped free, swirling in the air like knives. One sliced across his arm, cutting through his jacket. Blood spattered the ground. He gritted his teeth and pressed forward. The storm intensified, the wind howling like a living thing. The shapes beneath the glass thrashed violently, their silhouettes distorted by the turbulence. Riven spotted a cluster of collapsed survey pylons ahead, metal structures half buried in the glass. They formed a crude shelter. He ran for it. Lightning struck the ground behind him, shattering the surface. A creature burst through the crack, its body writhing, limbs flailing. It lunged. Riven swung the plasma cutter. The blade sliced through its torso. The creature collapsed, dissolving into a pool of glowing blue fluid. He didn't stop. He dove beneath the pylons just as another bolt of lightning struck, sending shards raining down. The metal groaned but held. He curled into a ball, breathing hard. The storm raged for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, it began to fade. The wind died. The lightning ceased. The blue glow dimmed. Silence returned. Riven crawled out from under the pylons. The plains were still again, but the shapes were gone. All of them. The sublayer was empty. Riven's stomach twisted. They weren't gone. They were moving. The march. He checked his bearings. The Sunken Relay was still 80 kilometers east. He could make it by dawn if he pushed hard. He started walking. The plains were eerily quiet. No whispers. No movement. The glass was cold beneath his boots. Too cold. He kept moving, scanning the horizon. The sky brightened with the first hint of dawn. The glass reflected the light in shimmering waves. Then he saw it. A ripple. Far ahead, near the relay's coordinates. The glass bulged upward, rising in a slow, deliberate arc. Something massive was pushing toward the surface. Riven broke into a run. His radio crackled. "Riven, are you seeing this?" He didn't answer. The bulge grew larger, spreading outward like a dome. Cracks radiated from its center. Blue light seeped through. The sunken relay stood at the edge of the dome, a half-buried structure of metal and concrete, its antennae twisted but intact. Riven sprinted toward it. The dome ruptured. A column of molten blue light shot into the sky, illuminating the plains for miles. The ground shook violently. Shards of glass exploded outward. Riven dove behind a fallen antenna. The light dimmed. Something rose from the crater. Something huge. A mass of fused limbs and torsos, writhing in unison. Faces pressed against its surface, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. Arms reached outward, grasping blindly. Riven's blood ran cold. It wasn't one creature. It was hundreds. Merged. Alive. Awake. The mass turned toward him. The whispers returned. Louder than ever. "Riven!" He staggered back. The creature surged forward, dragging itself across the glass with sickening speed. Riven ran for the relay. The relay. He reached the entrance just as the creature closed in. He slammed the door shut and threw the manual lock. The metal groaned under the impact as the creature slammed against it. He stumbled down the corridor, flashlight flickering. The relay was old, its walls cracked, its systems dead. But the central chamber, the archive room, was intact. He burst inside. The room was circular, lined with consoles and data cores. A single terminal flickered with faint power, drawing energy from a buried geothermal line. Riven activated it. The screen lit up. SUB Surface Anomaly Report. Classified Project. Glassbound. Riven's breath caught. He scrolled. Subjects exposed to extreme radiation and thermal flux exhibit non-terminal cellular fusion. Neural activity persists despite catastrophic physical alteration. Subjects demonstrate collective consciousness. Containment recommended. Surface breach probability, 87%. Riven swallowed hard. They weren't survivors. They were experiments. The ground shook violently. The creature was breaking through. Riven scanned the terminal for anything useful. A final line caught his eye. Emergency protocol. Seismic detonation. Collapse sublayer. Prevent emergence. A button flashed on the screen. Initiate protocol. The door behind him buckled. Riven hesitated. If he triggered the detonation, the entire plains would collapse, burying everything beneath kilometers of molten rock, including him. The door cracked open. A dozen fused arms reached through. Riven slammed his hand on the button. The terminal beeped. Protocol initiated 10 seconds to collapse. The creature roared, a sound like 1,000 voices screaming at once. Riven ran. The collapse. He sprinted down the corridor as the ground shook violently. The relay walls cracked. Dust rained from the ceiling. 5 seconds. He burst through the exit. The creature loomed over him, its mass towering, limbs writhing. For seconds, Riven ran toward the edge of the crater. 3 seconds. The ground split open. 2 seconds. He leapt. 1. The plains collapsed. A deafening roar filled the air as the entire surface gave way, plunging into the molten depths. The creature screamed, its body tearing apart as it was dragged downward. Riven fell. Heat engulfed him. Darkness swallowed everything. Part 3. Riven floated. Not in water. Not in air. In heat. A slow, rising warmth cradled him, lifting him through layers of darkness. His body felt weightless, suspended in a thick, viscous medium. He tried to move his arms, but they drifted sluggishly, as if wrapped in molten resin. A faint blue glow pulsed around him. He blinked. The darkness thinned. Shapes drifted past. Fragments of glass, shards of fused stone, twisted metal. They rose with him, carried upward by a massive thermal current. The collapse had triggered a subterranean eruption, a surge of molten pressure that now pushed everything toward the surface. Riven's mind flickered. He remembered the relay, the button, the creature, the fall. He should have died. Maybe he had. A whisper brushed the edge of his thoughts. Riven. He clenched his jaw. No, he muttered. Not again. The whisper grew clearer. Riven? Open your eyes. He forced them open. The blue glow brightened, illuminating a vast chamber of molten glass. The walls rippled like liquid mirrors. The heat should have incinerated him, but instead it felt gentle, almost soothing. A figure drifted toward him. The woman from the cavern. Her translucent skin shimmered with blue light. Her hair floated around her like strands of smoke. She reached out, her hand passing through the molten medium as if it were water. You survived, she said softly. Riven tried to speak, but his voice was swallowed by the thick fluid. She smiled. You're changing. He shook his head violently. No, he wasn't one of them. He wasn't. The woman drifted closer. You triggered the collapse, she said. You buried the Glassbound. You saved the surface. Her expression softened. But you didn't save yourself. Riven's pulse quickened. He looked down. His skin glowed faintly blue. His veins pulsed with light. No, he mouthed. The woman touched his chest. You were exposed to the sublayer for too long. The heat, the radiation, the consciousness. She tilted her head. You heard us. You felt us. You carried us. Riven thrashed, trying to swim away, but the molten medium held him in place. The woman's voice softened. You're not dying, Riven. She leaned closer. You're joining. The ascent. The thermal current surged, carrying them upward. The molten chamber narrowed into a vertical shaft, its walls glowing with intense heat. The pressure increased, pushing them toward a bright point of light far above. Riven struggled, but his limbs moved sluggishly. His skin shimmered with blue luminescence. His thoughts felt stretched, thin, as if something else was threading through them. The woman drifted beside him. You fought hard, she said. Harder than most. He glared at her. She smiled sadly. You think we wanted this? You think we chose to become what we are? The shaft trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the molten depths. We were trapped, she whispered, buried alive when the continents melted. Our bodies fused. Our minds merged. We became one because we had no choice. Riven's breath hitched. The woman reached out, touching his forehead. You heard us because you were alone. Because you were open. Because you were already halfway to us. He shook his head. But the blue glow in his veins pulsed faster. The light above grew brighter. The molten medium thinned. They were rising toward the surface. The surface. Riven burst through the molten layer like a diver breaking through water. He gasped. Cold air hit his lungs. He collapsed onto solid ground. Not glass but rough, jagged stone. The collapse had shattered the plains, exposing the ancient bedrock beneath. Steam rose from the fissures, carrying the scent of scorched minerals. The sky was gray with ash. The woman emerged beside him, her feet hovering inches above the ground. Riven tried to stand, but his legs buckled. His skin glowed brighter now, the blue light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He looked at his hands. They were changing. The woman knelt beside him. You can still walk, she said. For now. He glared at her. What do you want from me? She tilted her head. Nothing. She stood, gazing across the shattered plains. You collapsed the sublayer. You buried the Glassbound. You ended the cycle. She turned back to him. But something always survives. Riven's breath trembled. What happens to me? The woman's expression softened. You become what we were meant to be. He shook his head. No, I'm not. A wave of pain tore through him. He doubled over, clutching his chest. Blue light burst from his skin, illuminating the cracked stone beneath him. His bones felt like they were melting. His thoughts fractured, splitting into echoes. The woman placed a hand on his back. Don't fight it, she whispered. It only hurts more. Riven screamed. The sound echoed across the plains. the transformation. The pain subsided. Slowly, Riven lay on the ground, trembling. His skin no longer glowed. It radiated. His veins pulsed with steady blue light. His breath came in slow, controlled waves. He pushed himself upright. The world looked different. Sharper. Brighter. He could see heat signatures rising from the fissures. He could hear vibrations beneath the stone. He could sense movement miles away, the shifting of molten currents deep underground. The woman watched him. "You feel it now," she said. "The connection." Riven swallowed. He could feel something else too. Voices. Faint. Distant. Calling to him from beneath the collapsed plains. Not whispers. Songs. He shook his head, trying to block them out. The woman stepped closer. "You can't silence them," she said. "They're part of you now." Riven clenched his fists. "I won't join them." "You already have." He glared at her. She smiled gently. "You're not one of the Glassbound." "Not fully. You're something new. Something that can walk the surface. Something that can choose." Riven's breath caught. "Choose what?" She gestured to the shattered horizon. "What comes next?" The choice. The planes were gone. The glass was shattered. The sublayer was buried. The world was quiet. Riven stood slowly, testing his new strength. His body felt lighter, stronger, his senses sharper. The blue glow beneath his skin pulsed steadily. The woman drifted backward. "This is where we part," she said. Riven frowned. "You're leaving." She nodded. "Our place is below. Yours is above." He hesitated. "What am I supposed to do?" She smiled. "Survive." She began to sink into the fissure, her body dissolving into blue light. "Riven." He stepped forward. She paused. "You ended the old world," she said. "Now you decide what the new one becomes." Her form vanished into the depths. Riven stood alone. The wind swept across the shattered plains, carrying ash and silence. He looked at his hands, at the blue light beneath his skin, at the horizon, at the world he had saved and broken. He took a breath. The voices rose again, faint but steady. Not whispers, not commands, just presence. He closed his eyes and walked. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Glass Plains. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.